After Lawrence farmlands, I decided to make this interview with Anthony, with GI activist from South Africa who is half Boer and half Hungarian, because I see a very common thing in South Africa's present and Europe's future. Hi everyone! As I promised in my first video, I wanted to make an interview after Lawrence farmlands with my friend Anthony, who is actually half Boer and half Hungarian, so-called, well, let's say refugee. However, the conflict is not even confirmed that the South African conflict is a thing, but that's why I want to highlight now that we always speak about Syria and the other conflicts, and we or the rest of Europe want to take all these refugees, but no one cares about the real Europeans who are threatened there. So let me introduce you my friend, and who is actually a GI activist, and which we will also discuss. But first, I'm really happy that we were able to make this interview.
I'm happy too.
And my first question is just to give a bit insight to your life. So about your family background and yeah. So how did your parents met?
Yes. So just to get back, my father is a native Hungarian. He escaped Hungary in 1956 at the age of 13, and then went to Sweden for 12 to 13 years, and then decided to go to South Africa. My mom is, she's, as what you call in Afrikaans, a boerenmeisie. So like in Afrikaans or Dutch, it means a farmer. So she's a farmer's daughter. From my mom's side, like my forefathers escaped Europe mainly from the Netherlands, France, and Denmark in the 18th century and they went to Cape Town, that region, and then in the 19th century, when it became colonized by the British, they were pretty much oppressed by the British colony, and then they went inward. And then they settled down in the Orange Free State, which is like the middle parts of South Africa, which is pretty much considered as like Texas.
Really?
Of South Africa, yes.
Why?
Because of the lifestyle, the agriculture, etc.
Yes, and you told about me about these communities, about these tiny, very religious families and communities who live there. Can you please give an insight about these? How they live there, just in their everyday life.
Yes, well, we have like a lot of communities in South Africa, because unfortunately now with what is now going on in South Africa, not many, there is less and less trust for the government, or even nothing. Like one community that I can mention in South Africa that is thriving is Orania.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I think it was purchased in the late 80s, because it was purchased for like 1 million rand, which in those days was even stronger than the US dollar.
Wow.
And then now its value is I think it's, when I heard last time in 2013, 500 million rands. But I don't know but compared to currencies, etc., and inflation, I don't know how it's going now. But now it has a population of 10,000 people. It's the safest place in South Africa, and it actually works it has like privileges because it was actually bought as a business. And that's why people settle down there, so it's not like property.
Oh, I see.
So yes, I don't know the exact details, but it actually works as a function as a business.
Oh, I see. So not a state in the state, but just like around it.
No. But based on what is going on, there is like a big movement. I see. That's going on, or people are talking about it.
Why this Orania was founded? I mean, you mentioned these conflicts and things.
Yes.
There, so
because they knew that apartheid was going to end, and they knew what the consequences were going to be after Nelson Mandela and the ANC took power.
So was your family affected by sort of these conflicts?
Yes, but we were not affected in such a way that we had a break-in or attacked, etc. etc. No, that never happened, thank God. But after what happened, so when apartheid ended, one day at our home, someone knocked on our door, and a black man and a black woman came to us. They were on the front door, and they told us that we are here to take the house, and we just want to come and look inside to see how it looks. And well, my father said, if you put your foot inside his house, I'm going to call the police. But that was then when the police was reliable, because that was at the stage when it wasn't, that the police wasn't getting corrupt.
Which year?
I think this happened in 1994 or 1995. So every time in South Africa when people refer to 1994, that is the year when apartheid ended and Nelson Mandela came into power.
After this conflict, what was the last point when your family decided to move from South Africa?
Well, basically on what we were hearing about on the rumors. So we heard on the news about what was going on in Zimbabwe with the land grabbing by Robert Mugabe, and we were starting to hear about farm murders. Although we didn't have a farm, we just lived in a town in South Africa. But we also heard about the government in the parliament were talking about affirmative action, where people would be admitted to work based on the race and not so we would be accepted based on the skin color and not on merit, and which is actually going on right now.
And you heard only rumors, or
rumors?
Affected a friend or family of you there?
Yes, and even we heard it by friends and family, and even at my workplace, at my dad's workplace, where one of my father's colleagues, whose boss was black, and actually just literally pushed a guy out from the workplace who was white.
Just because he was white?
I don't know the exact route, but that was
the unofficial reason.
It was an unofficial reason, but I don't know the exact details based on that.
And was it shortly after Mandela got the power, or?
No, this happened about, when all of this happened, it happened at about in 2000, 2001 area.
So it's still a long march, let's say, the Blacks' long march.
It was a long march, but even with Nelson Mandela, it's like, we can say that he was busy getting his bearings straight. Mm-hmm. And I think the legacy moved on to Thabo Mbeki and then to Jacob Zuma.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and when did your family move to Hungary? Because as I know, the first you came to Hungary, or first to another country?
No, I moved to Hungary in 2002.
2002.
Yes.
And now you live. Now you don't live here, as I know.
No. I currently work and live in Vienna, but yes, I would like to come back to Hungary.
Great. And do you have any relatives still living in South Africa?
Yeah, of course. I have two relatives. On my mom's side, I have my one mom's aunt. My one aunt. She lives in the middle part of South Africa, and they have a farm. And my other aunt lives in Cape Town, where they're about to run out of water.
Really?
Yeah, I think for years now, Cape Town has been on red alert on the shortage of water. Because I think like 20 years ago, or more, just after apartheid, experts warned the government officials that they're running out of water and then they need to take precautions. But so far nothing has been done, and the media is just saying it's mainly climate, which is not true.
Wow. Then, what are the real reasons behind this?
I think it's just incompetence.
I see.
Incompetence and don't want to do anything, and also because it's the government that's ruling now is Mandela's government. That's a true Marxist, communist, socialist government, and all they just want to do is clinch to power, and they will do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Well, that's an old socialist proverb that if you have control over the voter, you have control over the whole country.
Yeah, it's like the latest Mad Max film.
Yeah.
And even South Africa, if we look at the economy, don't get me on the wrong page. I don't want to say that the economy, I don't want to say that everything was good under apartheid and everything started becoming bad afterwards, but statistically and factually, South Africa was a wealthy country, and everyone was pretty much well off. The only thing that really broke South Africa was the mainstream media and the leftist politicians. Those are the people who I think are responsible, and they actually have blood on their hands for causing this mess on what is going on now in South Africa.
What do you see? Where will it end, or which will? Yeah.
How
will it end? Yeah.
I don't know if it keeps on going like this, because I think a few months now that the ANC, now that Jacob Zuma is out, Cyril Ramaphosa is now the new president, and they have voted to expropriate the land without compensation.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
yes, and it's actually. And their argument is that when the whites came, that their land was taken away by force, which is
absolutely not true.
Which is absolutely not true, because on the lands which the Afrikaners claimed, before that there was a genocide between the black tribes, which was committed by Shaka Zulu, which was called Imfakane, which resulted to 1 or 2 million deaths. And once the Boers arrived there, there was no land, and honestly speaking, the land was fair game.
So actually, there's not just a war between the Boers and the blacks, but blacks between blacks still.
Yes, of course. Well, yes.
Between the tribes, or
yes.
How could we? Because from here, even after Lauren's movie, the conflict is very far from us. Because as I heard, and please confirm if it's true, that there are even like gang wars between blacks, and so it's like a mass war, everyone against everyone.
Yes, it's like anarchy. Like even in shops, there are even in small towns, there are a group of like gangs who just like destroy the whole town. And I remember once when I was driving with my parents, this was about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and we just saw a huge riot going on. Shops were broken into, looted, and there were like a lot of black gangs. They were just like doing their kind of dance, and it was like fire everywhere. Just exactly like what you see in the news and the films.
And was it against the Boers shops, or just randomly destroying everything?
I can't remember, because I was about 12 years old, and we just drove through. But what I saw in the image that came to my mind was pretty striking.
Wow. And is it true what was in Lauren's video, that it's still an everyday routine to live in a war? As I saw in the footage of Lauren, they were even burning fires and smoke around and riots.
Yeah.
Is it a part of the everyday life?
There is a lot of strikes. People are on strike all the time. So.
And you mentioned
there's a lot of social unrest.
And you mentioned that one of your relatives lives in farmlands and one in Cape Town. What's the difference between the countryside and the cities?
Well, the problem is farmlands. To live in a farm is it's actually the most dangerous profession that you can have statistically in the world. It's difficult to track all these statistics. But if I'm not mistaken, I think some say 4,000, some say 2,000, 3,000, but nevertheless, a lot are being murdered. I even hear from my aunt, who's a farmer. They say that even nearby farmers who they know have been murdered. And it's very tough. I visited them several times when I went for summer. They had this huge fence around their house, like a 3-meter high electric fence. We had to talk to them through an intercom. They had a camera in front of their house to make sure who's coming. They had 9 big Boer bull dogs like that, and alarm system, a private alarm.
It's like a fortress.
It is like a fortress, and even inside they had a collection of guns. But even with us, when we lived in South Africa too, in our own home, like when we started hearing about crime, murder, I come from a middle class neighborhood, and I heard from my parents that 2 or 3 houses away there was a break-in. The wife got raped, and the guy got almost beaten to death, and not much was, and they didn't try to steal much. They didn't steal much, and also I remember that's when we realized that we have to put up a fence around our house. We bought, my dad had to buy a Magnum 357. This was in 1999, which was then the most powerful gun you can get.
Yeah.
And the security was incredible. So even when he bought, like when we bought Rottweiler puppies, like we had to test them psychologically. So once, like for example, when my dad was here were the Rottweiler puppies, and when he hits the ground, and then of those those dogs who come to investigate, those are the ones he takes. But the ones who don't investigate, those are the ones who are afraid.
Yeah.
So we had to train them how to protect us.
So you were absolutely abandoned by the government and by the authorities.
Yeah, we felt that the police did nothing. Like even now you hear in cases where with farm attacks and with robberies, it's not the police that does the job. It's actually the private security forces. And I don't know where, but somewhere I heard that there are more people working for the private security services has more employees than the police and army put together in the country.
Oh, that's a huge anarchy.
It is complete. It is an anarchy, we have to say. And even in the universities and the schools as well, it's also like complete cultural Marxism that's going on there.
Wow.
Because now that I think recently they put the pass rate has become 30%, and like what I heard, like even at the universities, they were talking about how science, which was a Western, like an evil thing from the West, and it should fail, and should totally be restarted, abolished. So it's pretty scary.
You mentioned the universities. What kind of differences you see between the South African and between the European universities?
All right. The truth is, I didn't go to university in South Africa because I was 13 when I came here to Hungary. But all what I can tell and what I hear and the research I do is it doesn't matter if you go to a public, or if we have to say another way, state schools, there will always be some form of indoctrination or brainwashing. But what I experience here in Hungary, based on education, if I have to see the education, at least it's very objective.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to school in South Africa, 4th grade in 1999, I remember that at the beginning we learned about the Stone Age, and then afterwards we started learning about the black tribes, how mighty they were and how great. And that was all I remember. And then 5th grade there was no history, and then in 6th grade we started learning about how bad apartheid was. And I can even remember that when we were talking about this very emblematic, iconic photo of apartheid, where I think a black man was carrying a dead boy who got shot in a riot because they didn't want to learn Afrikaans, and the teacher was talking about it for about an hour or two. Okay, it is awful.
Yeah.
It was an issue, which I don't agree. I personally don't agree with apartheid, but I see the other side of the story, and I think it's worth putting it into conversation and to debate.
Now this is on the other side of the horse, so
yes, yes, but I understand that it's really bad, but I think for 2 hours is a bit too much.
Yeah.
To talk about that photo and the history, etc., is a bit like head warming.
And what's your opinion? What would be the solution for all of these? I mean, for not just for the education, the whole situation.
As we look at South Africa right now, whereas 50 murders a day, AIDS, rape, all this kind of crimes, civil unrest, and extremism on the rise, and also there are 11 official languages and different ethnic groups and 4 different races. as we look at South Africa, it's an extremely complex country. We have, sociological point of view, we have 11 official languages. It's English and Afrikaans, and 9 different black languages.
Wow.
So, and all with each and every different tribe, different culture, etc. There was a bloody past and bloody conflicts. And with the Marxist government, and to add on with all the social unrest and crime, I think one way, but it might not be a sudden, but it could be lead a path to an answer, would be is for young people from all walks of life who want South Africa to still exist, and for everyone to coexist.
Make
in
great
peace.
again.
Well, what I believe is that they should try to come together and form activism in peaceful activism like generation identity.
Yeah.
One of them, and fight for goals to make South Africa prosperous. I think one of the goals is for to bring back law and order, and in this case, it should be brought back in such a way that for murderers who murder people
Absolute cruel way.
in the most masochist, cruel way, would be eligible for a death penalty.
And do you think that all these law and order changes could be brought through peacefully? Because as we see now, and as you mentioned, 50 murders per day is too
54.
much. 54. So how could a peaceful solution be?
I have very difficulties, but it has to be done it has to be done within the country, and it has to come from the will of the people.
What do you think? How could Europe help in this?
I think the best way is not to give them any money, not shame the government as much as possible, and call them out for what they truly are.
You're lucky because you're, as a half Hungarian, this is also your home. And how do you take part in this struggle? How do you fight for these values you mentioned?
It's very simple. I think that if you care about the future and the present, then I think the best thing is to join similar people who think the same as you, and generation identity is the answer.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think because when the migrant crisis happened in 2015, that was like a red pilling moment for me. I immediately started to see the parallels of of South Africa and what direction it might be heading into, and yes, I was like looking around, joining some people who have common interests, and then I stumbled upon generation identity, and I think generation identity is the way to go.
What do you think, beside GI, how could the European governments could help South Africans? I mean, the Boers, or the Europeans who live there.
Yes, partly it's very difficult because a lot of South Africans who, like especially the Boers who live there, they're tied to the land for generations, and for them they would feel they don't really want to go because they believe that as they're very religious, they feel very tied to the land. But for those, because it's factually proven that politicians are singing out in public, "Kill the Boer,"
Yeah.
"Shoot to kill." Even Nelson Mandela took part in that song. Although he didn't sing, he did participate, lifting up his hand.
Yeah.
And although he didn't sing, that's even taking part and not telling them to stop is absolutely the same. Jacob Zuma singing out in public in Zulu, and then we have Julius Malema, who's doing it all the time. It's factually proven that they are singing out these songs, and since these murders, people have the murder of whites and white farmers have just escalated. Um, and what I do want to escalate, as it's factually proven, and if there are white South Africans who want to get asylum legally in one of the EU countries, then I think it's the EU country's obligation to give them the asylum.
From one hand, I feel ashamed that Australia offered this first before Europe do that. But I completely agree on that the motherland, Europe, shouldn't abandon these people.
No, and also and I think the reason why is because the majority of Europe are a bunch of social justice warriors who even today call the white South Africans racists. Of course, we can agree that apartheid was apartheid wasn't perfect and it wasn't good, but the thing is that people live much better. But it was actually the Marxists that started causing a lot of hassle in the country, and the problem is that the people who are sitting in the EU Parliament now advocated for this, and even the mainstream media. So it's even in media they don't talk about they pretty much ignore the incidents that's going on in South Africa. For example, when they spoke about Malema and Jacob Zuma singing, they don't make a big thing about it in the news. They don't talk about it for days. But imagine if Donald Trump would be singing songs like "Kill Black People" or Mexicans. This would go on for days and would result to his resignation without any question.
I think it's very important to preserve the ethnocultural heritage of the Boers. What do you think? How would it be possible for them to leave the country, to come to Europe and form Boer societies within Europe, or stay there with the help of the continent, or which path, or if there's a third option, then what do you think? What would be this for them to survive?
Yeah, I think second option would be like with this like when I just mentioned earlier about this people from all walks of life in South Africa, from all ethnic groups forming like a generation identity group. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't work, then they should form cantons, like in Switzerland. Like all of the ethnic groups, they have their own little group. But if that doesn't work, then I think that the country should just break up and form their own nation states. It's not just the Boers that would like to break away. Even in Cape Town, that region where it's inhabited by coloureds, they also feel that the political party that they have voted for years have sold them out, and they've decided to bring over blacks, and they're rather seeing the interests of the blacks over the coloureds. And there's also like a movement for the coloureds to break away from South Africa. So who knows? I don't know how it's going to go, but if things go that way, then Cape Town and that region, which is the province called the Western Cape, might form its own country in a decade or two. But I don't know. That's a big question mark.
Thank you for watching, and I hope this interview helped you to see the whole picture of South Africa and to see their struggle. And I would encourage the whole continent to help these people, because we can see our future there, and I think we must save them as well. And if we change our mindset, and if we help the Europeans living in South Africa, then I think we'll become that much red-pilled that we can save our own land. So, yeah, support them in every way you can.
Thank you.